A story of unexpected kindness. The morning mist still clung to the pine trees along Highway 27 when Robert Hayes spotted the car pulled over on the shoulder. He was already running 15 minutes late to the distribution center where he'd worked for the past 8 years, ever since his wife Sarah had passed. His daughter Emma, just turned 12 last week, had been moving slower than usual that morning, still fighting off the tail end of a cold. Getting her to school, making sure she had her inhaler, packing a lunch she'd actually eat. These small acts of fatherhood had stretched his morning routine just a bit too thin. But as Robert drew closer, he could see a woman standing beside a dark blue sedan, one hand pressed against the small of her back, the other resting on the gentle curve of her belly. Even from a distance, he could tell she was expecting, and she looked worried. Robert had been raised by a father who believed that you never pass someone in need. It was a simple philosophy, really, the kind his generation understood without needing to explain it. So he slowed his old pickup truck and pulled onto the shoulder behind her car, the gravel crunching under his tires. "Morning," he called out as he stepped down from his truck, keeping his voice gentle and non-threatening. The woman turned toward him, and he could see the relief wash over her features. She looked to be in her mid-30s, wearing a tan coat over a simple dress, her light brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her face showed the particular exhaustion that comes late in pregnancy. "Thank you for stopping," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. I think my tire went flat about a mile back, but I didn't want to stop until I found a spot away from the curve in the road." Robert walked around to examine the rear passenger tire. It was completely deflated, the rubber sagging against the rim. He knelt down, his knees protesting slightly, a reminder that 47 wasn't as young as it used to be. "You did the right thing, getting yourself somewhere safe," he told her. "I'm Robert, by the way." "Margaret," she replied. "Margaret Chen." "Well, Margaret, let's get this taken care of for you." Robert stood and brushed off his jeans. "You have a spare?" She nodded, looking embarrassed. "I do, but I've never actually changed a tire before. And with..." She gestured to her belly. "I didn't think I should be trying to figure it out today." Robert smiled, the kind of warm, understanding smile that came from years of patience. "No need to apologize. That's what neighbors are for, even if we're just meeting on the side of the road." He could see his phone lighting up in the truck's cab through the window. That would be Gary from the warehouse, wondering where he was. Robert had never been late before, not in 8 years. But there were some things more important than a perfect attendance record. "Let me get your spare out and we'll have you back on your way in no time," he said, already moving to open her trunk. As Robert worked, loosening the lug nuts and positioning the jack, Margaret stood nearby, wrapping her coat tighter against the cool morning air. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "I could call a service. Out here?" Robert glanced around at the empty stretch of highway, surrounded by nothing but forest. "Could take them an hour or more to reach you. Besides, we're halfway done already." There was a comfortable silence as Robert worked, punctuated only by the sound of metal on metal and the occasional car passing by. It was the kind of silence that feels full rather than empty, the kind that comes when two people understand that not everything needs words. "Do you have far to go?" Robert asked, grunting slightly as he lifted the flat tire free. "About 40 miles north," Margaret said. "I have a doctor's appointment this morning. Monthly checkup." She paused, then added, "I'm due in about 6 weeks." Robert fitted the spare tire onto the wheel hub, his movements practiced and sure despite the years since he'd needed to use these skills regularly. "First child?" "Yes." There was a mixture of joy and nervousness in her voice that Robert recognized. He remembered that feeling well. "It's something special," he said softly, tightening the lug nuts in the star pattern his own father had taught him 30 years ago. "Scary as all get out sometimes, but special. I've got a daughter. She's 12 now. Time goes faster than you think it will. Your wife must be proud," Margaret said, raising such a gentleman. Robert's hands paused for just a moment before continuing their work. "She passed away," he said simply, 4 years back. Cancer. But yeah, Sarah, she would have appreciated this. Helping someone in need, that was important to her." "I'm so sorry," Margaret said, and Robert could hear the genuine empathy in her voice. Thank you. Robert lowered the jack and stood, wiping his hands on a cloth from his truck. There you go, all set. But this spare is just temporary, you understand. You'll want to get that flat properly fixed or replaced soon as you can. Margaret's eyes were bright with gratitude. Thank you so much, Robert. Really? Can I pay you for your time? Robert shook his head firmly. No, ma'am. Just, when you get a chance, help someone else who needs it. That's payment enough. She studied his face for a moment, then smiled. You're a good man, Robert Hayes. He felt his phone buzzing again in his pocket. 25 minutes late now. You drive safe now, he said. And congratulations on the baby. As he climbed back into his truck and pulled onto the highway, Robert allowed himself one small sigh. He'd have some explaining to do at work, that was certain. But he'd done the right thing. That had to count for something. The distribution center was buzzing with the usual morning activity when Robert finally arrived, 38 minutes late. He clocked in, feeling the weight of eyes on him as he made his way to the supervisor's office. Gary was waiting, his expression stern. Hayes, you know the policy, Gary said, not unkindly but firm. 3 instances of tardiness in a calendar year, and we have to let you go. This is your 3rd. Robert felt his stomach drop. Gary, I know, but there was a pregnant woman stranded on Highway 27. Her tire was flat, and I believe you, Robert. I do, but I don't make these policies. Corporate does. Gary looked genuinely regretful. I've got to write this up. I'll try to frame it as best I can, but... The rest of the day passed in a blur. By lunch, Robert had been called to Human Resources. The woman behind the desk, someone he'd never met before, was polite but distant as she explained that his employment was being terminated effective immediately. 8 years of dedication, of never missing a day, of going above and beyond. None of it seemed to matter against the hard line of company policy. Robert cleaned out his locker in a daze. As he carried his small box of belongings to his truck, he thought about Emma. How would he tell her? How would they manage? His mind raced through their bills, their modest savings, the careful budget that kept them afloat. That evening, sitting at their small kitchen table while Emma did her homework, Robert explained what had happened. He kept his voice steady, reassuring. So you got fired for helping someone? Emma asked, her young face troubled. I did. That's not fair, Dad. Robert reached across and squeezed her hand. No, honey, it's not. But you know what? I'd do it again. Because doing the right thing, that's more important than any job. That's what Grandpa taught me, and what your mom believed too. Some things are worth the cost. Emma nodded slowly, her eyes wise beyond her years. She'd grown up too fast, Robert thought, losing her mother so young. But she'd also learned what really mattered. 3 days later, Robert was in his work clothes, not because he had anywhere to go, but because routine helped him think. He was reviewing job listings online when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Mr. Hayes, this is Jessica calling from Sterling Industries. I'm reaching out on behalf of our CEO. She'd like to meet with you this afternoon if you're available. Robert frowned. Sterling Industries? That was the parent company that owned the distribution center. Yes, I suppose I could. May I ask what this is regarding? I'm not at liberty to say, sir. But Miss Chen was quite insistent that we reach you today. Chen, the name echoed in Robert's mind. It couldn't be. The Sterling Industries headquarters was a modern glass building in the city about an hour's drive from Robert's home. He'd never been there before, had never imagined he would be. As he rode the elevator to the executive floor, still wearing his only good pair of khakis and a button-down shirt, he felt distinctly out of place. The receptionist led him to a spacious office with windows overlooking the city, and there, rising from behind a large desk with some effort, was Margaret Chen. She was wearing professional maternity wear now, her hair down around her shoulders, but he recognized her immediately. Robert, she said warmly, coming around the desk. Thank you for coming. He stood there speechless for a moment. You're the CEO? Margaret smiled, gesturing to a comfortable chair. I am. Please, sit down. I imagine you have questions. Robert sank into the chair, his mind reeling. I don't understand. 3 days ago, Margaret began, settling herself carefully in the chair beside him rather than behind her desk. A good man stopped to help me when I was stranded and vulnerable. He was kind without any expectation of reward. He made me feel safe. And then he refused payment, asking only that I help someone else when I could. She paused. Later that day, I received a routine report about employee terminations across our various facilities. Your name was on it. Robert felt heat rise to his face. I was late because you stopped to help me. I know. Margaret's expression was serious now. I called the facility manager. I asked him about you. Do you know what he said? Robert shook his head. He said you were one of the best employees he'd ever had. Reliable, hardworking, respectful. That in 8 years you'd never been late until your daughter had been sick earlier this month, and then again when you stopped to help me. He said you were a single father who had never once complained, never asked for special treatment, and that letting you go was one of the hardest things he'd ever had to do because of company policy. Robert's throat felt tight. He said that? He did. And it got me thinking about our policies, about what kind of company we're running when we fire good people for being human, for showing kindness. Margaret leaned forward slightly. Robert, I can't undo what happened, but I can offer you something better. Over the next hour, Margaret explained her vision. She wanted to create a new community outreach program for Sterling Industries, something that would connect the company with the people and communities they served. She needed someone to run it, someone who understood what it meant to help others, who had integrity and compassion. The pay is better than your previous position, she said, and the hours are more flexible, which I imagine might help with Emma. But more than that, it's a chance to make helping people your actual job, to show others that kindness matters. Robert sat back, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Margaret suggested gently. Talk it over with your daughter. This is a big change. That evening, Robert told Emma everything. She listened intently, her eyes growing wider with each detail. So the lady you helped, she's giving you a better job? She's offering one, yes. Emma was quiet for a moment, then she smiled, a smile that reminded Robert so much of Sarah it made his heart ache. Mom would say this is what happens when you do the right thing, even when it's hard. Robert felt tears prick his eyes. Yes, sweetheart, I think she would. 2 weeks later, Robert started his new position. And 6 weeks after that, he received a photo in the mail. It showed Margaret in a hospital bed, tired but glowing, holding a tiny baby wrapped in a soft blanket. On the back, she'd written, Robert, meet Grace, named for the grace of strangers who become friends. Thank you for reminding me what matters most. Robert pinned the photo to his office bulletin board, right next to a drawing Emma had made years ago of their family. As he looked at both images, he thought about the strange and wonderful ways life unfolds, about how one act of kindness on a foggy morning could change everything. He thought about his father's simple wisdom, about Sarah's generous heart, about Emma's growing understanding of what it means to live with integrity, and he thought about how sometimes, when we lose something we thought we needed, we find something we didn't even know we were looking for. In the end, Robert understood something his father had always known. When you help someone in need, you're not just helping them, you're becoming the person you were meant to be. And that, more than any job or title or reward, was worth everything.